Let's bring in Judiciary Committee member Congressman Tom McClintock. Congressman, have you heard whether the president's lawyers plan to participate in the Judiciary Committee's first impeachment hearing this week?
No, I haven't. I think it would be to the president's advantage to have his attorneys there. That is his right. But I can also understand how he is upset at the illegitimate process that we saw unfold in the Intelligence Committee. The big question is going to be whether Jerry Nadler continues that into the Judiciary Committee's hearings or whether he respects the due process rights of the president, not only to be represented by counsel, but also to have the unrestricted right to call witnesses in his defense and to confront his accuser.
So you think they should bring in lawyers?
I think it's to his advantage, yes.
And Chairman Nadler also did send this letter asking whether the Republicans plan to issue subpoenas or issue any questions, written questions. Will your party do that?
I expect that they will. In fact, I know the discussions are ongoing as to the witnesses that we would like to call. So you'll recall in the intelligence hearings, Republicans asked for 9 witnesses. Adam Schiff vetoed 6 of those. In a free society, the prosecution doesn't get to choose what witnesses the defense wishes to call. And yet that's what's been going on in the Intelligence Committee. And again, the question is going to be whether Jerry Nadler continues that sham in the judiciary hearings. When it goes over to the Senate, that's going to play a big role, I think, in the Senate's deliberations. They, I think, will insist on full due process rights, and that could blow up in the Democrats' faces.
And we've been talking about the McGahn decision here all morning. We know it is being appealed. But if the courts rule in the future that senior officials like John Bolton, Mick Mulvaney could testify, do you believe they should?
Absolutely. And in fact, again, I think it would be to the president's advantage to have them testify now. But of course, he has to weigh that against the enormous catastrophic damage that would do to the doctrine of executive privilege that assures that when policy is being developed within the administration, those discussions are unfettered, are candid, are thinking outside of the box. That's why the doctrine of executive privilege exists. So he's got to weigh those 2 elements, and I understand why he's making the decision that he is to defend that doctrine of executive privilege, not only for his administration, but for all future administrations. So, and by the way, that's the discussion that's been going on since George Washington was subpoenaed documents in the Jay Treaty by the House back in 1796.
So you believe they should testify but not say much?
No, I think it would be in his advantage to have them testify, but again, that would shatter the doctrine of executive privilege, and that's the question that he has to weigh in whether to invoke that privilege.
And what about testimony from the president's personal lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, who Gordon Sondland said was in the loop on everything? Should he testify?
Well, again, I think more information is better than less in every aspect of an inquiry, and the adversarial process is very important to test what's true and what's not. My objection to what the Congress has done is it is impeded that process by vetoing Republican witnesses and by interfering with the due process rights of the president in what is a quasi-judicial proceeding.
And the New York Times also reported this week that the president knew about the whistleblower complaint in August, before he released the military aid in early September, which would mean when Trump spoke to Gordon Sondland in September, he was well aware of what was going on. So when he said there was no quid pro quo, he would have to have been aware of that complaint. What's your response to that?
Well, the implication is that this is an admission of guilt because the president found out about the whistleblower complaint and then immediately released the aid. That's not what happened. Several weeks went by before that aid was released. Now, remember, under our Constitution, the president has sole authority to
But he specifically mentioned there was no quid pro quo to Sondland in that phone call. Could he be covering his tracks?
And among all of the testimony of the hand-picked witnesses that the Democrats have heard for 2 weeks in public hearings, not one was told that there was a quid pro quo. The only conclusions that they came to were supposition and impressions they got reading the New York Times. But remember, the president conducts our foreign policy. He's commanded to take care that the laws be faithfully enforced, and the National Defense Authorization Act, which authorized aid to Ukraine in the first place, requires that the administration determine that that country is taking steps to combat corruption before he releases the aid. As I read his conversation with Zelensky, that's exactly what he was doing.
When you defend the president and think about these hearings, is there anything in your mind that the president did involving Ukraine that is wrong or that concerns you in any way?
Well, he didn't use the delicate language of diplomacy in that conversation, that's true. He also doesn't use the smarmy talk of politicians. What you hear from Donald J. Trump is the blunt talk of a Manhattan businessman. He says what he means what he says. That's the only thing that's remarkable about that conversation. But he was entirely within his constitutional authority and was following the statute that Congress adopted in granting aid to the Ukraine.
Okay, we're going to have to leave it there. Thanks so much for joining us this morning.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.